Secretary Blinken says acts that fall within these new punitive restrictions include manipulating or rigging the electoral process, disenfranchising voters, excluding the political opposition from electoral processes, or restricting the ability of civil society organizations to operate and engage in various human rights and governance-related activities, among others.
Blinken further warned that anyone who undermined the democratic process in Zimbabwe, including in the lead-up to, during and following Zimbabwe's August 2023 elections, may be found ineligible for US visas under this policy. He indicates that the visa restriction policy will apply to specific individuals involved in these acts and is not directed at the Zimbabwean people. In late August, the State Department noted systemic bias against the political opposition during the pre-election period in Zimbabwe, and reports that Zim Election Commission officials pressured election observers to sign altered polling station result forms, while further condemning acts of intimidation and disruption of lawful election observers. Acts, Washington says, belied President Emmerson Mnangagwa's repeated pledges to respect the rule of law, transparency and accountability. In March, President Joe Biden also informed Congress that he had renewed the 2 decades-old sanctions against Zimbabwe despite fierce lobbying by SADC, citing violent repression of citizens and a lack of necessary political and economic reforms. Meanwhile, Blinken also announced the expansion of a visa restriction policy for Uganda to include current and former officials complicit in undermining the democratic process in the East African nation, or for policies or actions aimed at repressing members of marginalized or vulnerable groups, including human rights defenders and LGBTQI persons, among others. President Yoweri Museveni signed a controversial bill into law earlier this year, criminalizing same-sex conduct while imposing draconian measures, including the death penalty for what they refer to as aggravated homosexuality.
Similar visa restrictions were applied in 2021 after what the State Department referred to as Uganda's flawed presidential elections, citing issues of violence and intimidation. President Biden announced in October that Uganda would lose its eligibility to the African Growth and Opportunity Act in January next year over violations of internationally recognized human rights. Blinken has urged the government of Uganda to make concerted efforts to uphold democracy and respect and protect human rights in order to sustain the decades-long partnership between Kampala and Washington. Sherwin Bryce-Pease, SABC News, New York.